Could you recommend some specific books or resources or YouTube videos that clarify the role of women in Islam and explain the commonly misunderstood hadiths or Quranic verses? Some of them are cherry picked, but today I think someone is asking about Surah An-Nisa, Ayah 34, about the protection. I have the translation up in front of me if you would like me to read it.
Sure.
Men are the caretakers of women, as men have been provisioned by Allah over women and tasked with supporting them financially. And righteous women are devoutly obedient and when alone protective of what Allah has entrusted them with. And if you sense ill conduct from your women, advise them first. If they persist, do not share their beds. But if they still persist, then discipline them gently. But if they change their ways, do not be unjust to them. Surely Allah is most high, all great.
All right, Sadaqallah al-Azim. So that's an important question. And yes, absolutely. I have a number of book recommendations. In fact, I have with me here in my office, I have quite a few books on Islamic parenting and raising teens. So I'm happy to share those. But first things first. Yes. So to Ayah 434, by the way, since the question was asked before I mentioned the book recommendation. Let me just say, as someone who teaches theology and Quranic commentary, I have thought about this ayah quite a bit, and I have a number of strategies for how to read scripture and how to read ahadith, especially those pertaining to issues of women and gender. So let me say that the ayah 434, I think, has been misconstrued. And so ayah 434 is actually a very beautiful concept because in that ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is presenting the concept of qiwama, which, by the way, is not male domination over females. Qiwama is the idea of leadership, responsible, caring, compassionate leadership. So the ayah really establishes certain parameters for the immense responsibility that men have to uphold within the marital relationship. I would also add that marriage is really the only human relationship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes as mithaqan ghalidha, a weighty covenant. And the only other example of the mithaq and the ghalidha that God presents in the Quran is the covenant into which I believe Bani Israel enters. They enter into a covenant with God, and then of course with their prophets. So it's really on that level. So I think that we really need to reframe our notions of qiwama because it's not what we think. Now, what the ayah is doing here, the ayah outlines practical steps when a marriage is really kind of at risk of collapsing. So the ayah is not advocating that within sort of the context of normal day-to-day disagreements, that husbands ought to start beating wives. That's not correct. That's something that is, it's a wildly inaccurate interpretation of the ayah that is put forth by either people who have some misogynistic views or by people who have an anti-Islam agenda, to be very honest with you. So the book recommendation that I have is by Dr. Hadia Mubarak, and this is an academic work that looks at in depth at the tafasir, at the commentaries on 434 and the marital relationship. And again, the author is Dr. Hadia Mubarak, and the book is entitled Rebellious Wives, Neglectful Husbands. Rebellious Wives, Neglectful Husbands, Controversies in Modern Quranic Commentaries. And make sure that you look up this book because she goes through an entire analysis of 434 and what the ayah is really getting at. It's a really excellent work. Now, let's see. So I think that answers that question. But if you want a shorter read, Yaqeen Institute has a really excellent gender series, and there are several articles that debunk some of the most common misconceptions about women in Islam and women under Sharia law. So I'd really recommend taking a look at Yaqeen Institute's gender section and maybe starting with those articles, because those articles also go into some of those ahadith that people run into and that perhaps raise questions about women in Islam. Again, as someone in academia, there are a number of other books and resources I can recommend, but I would really kind of start there.